Hello there, and welcome back to the Chaps Guide, the channel where we talk about men's style, self-development and personal grooming. And today, well, you join me again in the enchanted forest for a bit more of a conversation than a lecture. I normally talk to you about my views and thoughts on how we should dress, but today I want to pose you a question and perhaps we can talk it through together. And the question really is all about the fact that on this channel we spend a lot of our time deploring the casualisation of men's dressing standards. And in fact, if you look at the modern era, men are increasingly content to work in even professional jobs and dress in the most casual of clothes. You know, a few years ago, people in professions who would, as a matter of course, have worn a suit, collar and tie, today think nothing of wearing denim, a t-shirt and casual shoes, sneakers or trainers to work. And that degradation has really seeped through society, and people now, you know, dress down to go out opposed to how they would have dressed in the golden era of menswear. You know, that period perhaps between the 30s and 60s where we see the Cary Grants, the David Nivens, all of those very stylish men in those movies of that era where a collar, suit and tie would have been de rigueur for pretty much every event, not just going to work, but socialising, meeting friends for cocktails, going to the eponymous opera, or wherever else one chooses to spend one's downtime. But now it's all changed, and people are happy to wear, you know, sweatpants and running shoes or whatever, which is fine. You know, there is a place for sweatshirts and sweat trousers, generally in the gym or when engaged in labouring work in the garden. But is it something you should routinely wear in public when you're being judged by the people that you meet? So the question I pose to you today, chaps, is this: is it possible for a chap to be overdressed in this modern era? So I think it's easier to explore this question if we break it down into different spheres of life. And the first one is at work. Is it possible to be overdressed at work? Well, it's a difficult question to answer, because if you think about it, as I just said, you know, jobs which used to be an expectation of being well dressed, now because of this degradation of good quality sartorial dressing in men, it's kind of gone down to the fact that people dress down in the workplace and that's expected. But the problem is, you know, you're watching this channel, so you're a sartorially prosperous gentleman. You enjoy dressing well and portraying a great first image on people that you meet. So it makes you feel a little uncomfortable if you're in a workplace where all of your co-workers are in t-shirts and jeans. You know, it can make you feel out of place and not a member of the team if you wear just a shirt and jacket, as I am today. Forget the tie, you know, even just putting a jacket on and even a shirt with a collar in some workplaces can set you apart. So how do you overcome that? Now, the answer to this question, in my mind, is not so much your mode of dress, but how your mode of dress will grate upon your co-workers. Because the problem will be that if everybody adopts a very casual style of dress and you go into work and you are a person who likes to wear a collar and tie or even a jacket with an open collared shirt, dressed as I am today, this might set you apart from your colleagues and lead to people jumping to the wrong conclusion. Now, if you wear a collar and tie, what might be considered to be the corporate uniform of management, people will immediately have you pegged down as somebody who's perhaps ambitious, aspirational, and they might treat you differently. And that's kind of the risk that you run by being a sartorially elegant person. Now, of course, the problem can be rendered even worse if you find that your line manager, your boss, is a sloppy dresser, and you're turning up for work looking like the chief exec, and your manager looks like somebody who should be working in the laundry room. And that's where you might get some friction because you look so much smarter and your co-workers, well, be frank, they look rather sloppy. So how do you countenance that? How do the two styles of you being sartorially elegant and your colleagues being casual, how do they rub along? In simple answer to our original question, it may be possible to overdress in the workplace. Obviously, it depends on your workplace. If you work in construction, wearing a suit is never going to be an option. You're going to blend in with your protective clothing. But in an office environment, or perhaps a retail environment, or a marketing environment, wherever you work, if there is the opportunity to dress with an element of personal choice, you have to be a little careful. You have to be mindful that the way you dress will impact upon the people around you. And it's possible to mitigate the negative aspects of people seeing you as an aspirational, ambitious person by altering your look whilst still remaining sartorial elegant. And that will be things like, well, remove the tie. The tie is the final element of formality in many people's clothes. So remove the tie, add a jaunty coloured pocket square, or wear shirts which are not solid colours, which tend to give you that authoritative management look. You know, go for brightly coloured shirts. Still wear the jacket, still wear the trousers and the polished shoes, but making some little amendments like that can just bring down the tone of your clothing, and very quickly your co-workers will realise that you're actually just a dapper dresser. You're not somebody who's got ulterior motives, and they will appreciate you as being somebody who's, you know, an elegant person, who's interested in their appearance and the impression that that has on others. And who knows, in no time at all, you will have led a revolution in the workplace. You'll see your colleagues suddenly starting to raise their game to the way that you dress. You'll start to see the jackets creeping in, the well-polished shoes, because it's instinct. People like to look good in front of others. And if one person in the group suddenly looks good, you'll want the others will soon see themselves rising to that standard. So lead the revolution. Don't be afraid to dress with your instincts, look sharp, dress dapper, and lead them into a bright sartorial future. So let's talk about dressing well casually and how you can possibly be overdressed in that situation. Well, I mean, I like to wear a jacket out, but it's all about the where and when of the situation when it comes to determining if you're overdressed. So if you're going to meet some friends down at the pub or the bar, or whatever the social gathering point for your circle of friends is, if you turn up and you're greatly overdressed to everybody else, now this can cause a bit of disquiet in the group. It's a bit like that workplace situation. People are going to think, what's this guy out to prove? Is he showing us up? You know, we look so scruffy because he looks well dressed. So think about the context that you're going to be in and alter your dress accordingly. Now that doesn't mean that you've got to tone down your dress. I mean, what you can do is amend it a bit like we talked about in the workplace. If your associates, your friends are not, or they don't share your dapper sense of elegance, all you have to do is change yourself a bit. Instead of wearing a suit, collar and tie, wear a sports jacket or a blazer with chinos. That's kind of hitting that formality middle ground, which is acceptable both above and below common areas of formality. So, you know, little things like that, so that people are not overshadowed by you. The other thing you might get is if you're going to, you know, functions or events with friends and you're the well-dressed one, people will automatically assume that you are the leader of that group. It's one of the really good reasons why people dress well, to stand out and show themselves apart. But in certain situations, it might have a negative impact, particularly if you're out socially, you know, when you're going on a museum tour, people will be speaking to you because they assume you to be the leader rather than the group that you're with. So think about how you can make people feel a little bit more comfortable by amending the way that you dress. And remember, when it comes to social overdressing, you know, a good quality gentleman always seeks to make their guests and those around them the centre of attention, to make them feel special. Remember, it's not about you, it's about everybody else, and that's good gentlemanly mindset to get yourself into. So it is possible to make people feel comfortable around you whilst not overdressing. And those close friends, of course, you will soon be raising their standard anyway, because at Christmas and birthday, you'll be giving them, you know, a pocket square as a gift, or a tie, or tips all the time about where they could be buying better quality shoes. And again, through leadership, before you know it, your friends will soon have raised their game to your standard, not you lowering your game to theirs. So social overdressing can be overcome, and you can improve the standards of those around you by being a true gentleman, a true chap. Now, when it comes to dressing in general and not being too overdressed, a really good touch point to go to for advice and guidance, in fact, and I refer to them regularly on this channel, it's James Bond, and more recently the Bond movies of the current era that we've been in, because Bond has existed in an area of increasing casuality for the last 3, 4, 5 movies, and it's been interesting to see how the dressers in the Bond movie have dressed the character Bond in keeping with the era in which the current movies are set, so as not to overdress him, yet still dress him in such a way that he's perceived as being one of the best dressed and stylish men in the world. Quite often that's how many people use James Bond as an example when it comes how to dress well. So take a look at the more recent movies, the Daniel Craig era, as I film this, the sort of the 2010 and beyond, and you get a good example of how they've dressed him to keep him relevant for the times in which he's in, particularly the non-formal scenes, because you often see him now wearing very casual jackets, bomber jackets, Harrington jackets, yet still looking incredibly sharp and stylish. So if you find yourself at a loss of how to look sharp in the modern era, whilst overcoming a desire not to overdress, because a suit and tie is not the answer to everything, have a look at some of those Bond films, take some of that advice and employ it into your own life, because it really works, and I do it all the time. So let's talk about another life situation where overdressing may be an issue. Let's talk about the date, or a social interaction with a potential partner, however you want to phrase it. And let's think about that event. You're meeting somebody who's relatively new to you, and the last thing you want to do is make them uncomfortable in the situation. And I could think of few things more embarrassing than turning up for, say, a drink in a bar or a coffee date, and you turning up all dressed up to the nines, and your potential partner or your associate for this event turns up extremely casual. They're going to feel a little bit underdressed, embarrassed, and it's not going to set the dynamic off in the right direction. Now, I think the key to making sure this never happens is communication. There's going to be communication before the meeting. So you want to communicate to that person that you are somebody who enjoys dressing well. Style is something which is very important to me. When we meet, you'll notice me in the crowd because I'm the guy who's the sharpest dressed. You're already putting in that person's mind the impression that you're somebody who likes to make a really good impression when you meet people, and dressing is important. Otherwise, they might turn up and think that you're some sort of eccentric dandy dresser and get off on entirely the wrong foot, and it's not going to look very good for you in the future relationship going forward. So I think communication is the key. You can still look sharp and dandy, but do so in a way that the other person knows what to expect. They can dress accordingly, or you can lower your dressing expectations for this one meeting so that you don't wrong foot the other person in the way that they're dressed and make this a traumatic experience for everybody involved. So communication is the key when it comes to a dating situation. Now let's talk about the job interview. Now, you may think that this is the one area of dressing where you can pull out all the artillery and throw it all at the front line, because this is your chance to make a fantastic first impression. And without a doubt, the people who are meeting you for this interview are going to be judging you on the way that you look. Now, if you're applying for a public-facing job, they are really going to be judging you on the way you look. So it's important to dress in a way which is appropriate for that interview. Now, whilst I say bring out the artillery, you have to be careful just about how much you bring out. Because remember, they're going to be judging how you're going to fit into the dynamic of the existing team or group that you will be joining, or the image of the company. So if you turn up, with a 3-piece tweed suit, with a bow tie, a boutonniere, a pocket square, and all the other bits and pieces that you could throw at the front line, they're going to think, hang on a minute, this is an individual who perhaps is a little eccentric, and who perhaps, if it's a public-facing job, isn't going to present the best possible image of our company. I would say when it comes to a job interview, it's possible to be exceptionally well dressed, but by doing the basics to the very highest degree. Now turn up in a ironed shirt and tie. Turn up in a charcoal suit or a navy suit, not some bizarrely patterned or 1970s retro suit because you're trying to make a sartorial impression or send a message to people about your style. You know, go for the basics and do it exceptionally well. Your footwear, wear black cap to Oxfords or semi-brogues, shine them up to a high degree. Just go to town on the elementary parts of dressing well. You know, wear a pocket square, but wear a white pocket square in a presidential fold, not some bizarre bouffant style that's going to, you know, really stand out. Don't wear a cravat, don't wear a bow tie. Limit yourself to tie bars. When it comes to jewellery, you know, just wear a simple watch. Don't wear any big fancy things or bracelets or visible neck chains. Just cut out all of those real style statements that you're trying to make just for this interview. When you've got through that, you can show them you're, you know, a really snappy dresser, and you can deliver just by, you know, focusing on those elements, those elementary bits which make you stand out because you pay attention to the detail. And you can put yourself across in the best possible way and stand yourself the best chance of success in the job interview. So let's just round that up. We've talked about various lifestyle situations you can find yourself in, and we've talked about, yes, I think the answer to the overall question is yes, it is possible to overdress. It is possible for a detrimental effect to happen to you by dressing too much, by, you know, pushing that message that you're a sharp dresser a little bit too much into people's faces. It could make them, you know, be weary about your intentions and have concerns about your ability to fit in. The answer, of course, is to apply context to every situation you find yourself in. Think about the way that people ordinarily dress in those situations and set out to be the best dressed person within the boundaries of what is acceptable under those circumstances. Don't step outside those circumstances and make a spectacle of yourself. You know, there's a time and a place for that, for standing out from the crowd. But in most of the situations we've just talked about, you want to remain in the boundaries of normality, but look great within those boundaries. And that's the key, really. It's possible to be the best dressed man in the room every day, all the time, without looking a clown. And that's the goal, to remaining perfectly dressed in every situation. So avoid being overdressed, dress to the best standard that you can in the situation, and the best way to do that is to like and subscribe to the Chaps Guide. That way you will benefit from all of the advice that we give you and always look your best in any given situation. So I hope you've enjoyed this video today, and it's brought you some tips and advice and some thinking that you can apply in your life situations to positive effect. I bid you well. I look forward to seeing you again very soon, and hope you remain healthy and happy until then. Until the next time, take care.